Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video for Neat and Tangled. This is a new stamp set called Beach Day and also a new stencil. This is part of the June 2017 release. This stencil is super intricate and totally beautiful. I love it. It's such a fun pattern for summer, but I wanted it to be sticky and I didn't want to have to go over the whole thing with Tembo Mana multi-glue. So I just used Elmer's spray adhesive and I just sprayed that in a old mailbox. Do it in a well-ventilated area though because it's very smelly. So here, this is Eclipse masking paper. Let me enunciate. And so I want to do a background because to me these beach day stamps just screamed background. So I kind of messed around, you can see here, and I'm going to actually draw out the same kind of idea on this masking paper so that I can do some distress ink in the background and then also with the stencil. So I'm just drawing this out with a mechanical pencil, and then I'm going to go in and cut everything out with my scissors, but keep your pieces parts. You need all three of the pieces. So I'm going to mask off where the hill, the beach, it's not really a hill, it's a beach, is going to be, and then I'm going to go in with Salty Ocean to do the color of my sky. Now this isn't going to matter if this is down where the area where my water is going to be, so that's why I'm only masking off the hill part. I'm not putting down any more masks than I need to. Once I was happy with the way that the sky looked, then I'm going to mask that off so that I can just concentrate on the part that is the water. So I'm going to cover the whole thing with cracked pistachio, which is a really just kind of a pretty mint color. And then working towards, I guess I'm working towards blue. So from there I'm going into peacock feathers, and I'm concentrating my color in the left hand side. So each time I'm coming down less and less. So it's going to be the darkest in that left hand corner. And the final color is going to be Blueprint Sketch. And I did go back over this so that it blended out better. I just didn't want to bore you to death. So now I'm switching it up. I'm using Distress Oxides because they are mixed with pigment, so they're made to kind of sit on top of darker colors. So even though I used colors like Mermaid Lagoon and Blueprint Sketch, you're still going to be able to see this because it'll sit on top. So once that was done, I masked the water, and now I'm going to do the part that is the beach. For this, I'm using antique linen. I was so lazy. I wanted to do a scene, but I didn't want to do a bunch of masking as far as the little characters because I didn't want to cut them all out. So I'm doing the antique linen, but I'm basically leaving the top portion of that white because I have characters that are going to go there and I didn't want to have to mask them out. So the brushed corduroy is going to be used really just where the sand would be the darkest, where it would be wet by the water line. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove all of the masks because now my background is done. Now you may be asking yourself, Kelly, why would you create your background with distress inks? And it's because A, it's easy. Even though I have to do the masking, it's still easier. And B, it saves me like a ton on my Copic ink. I don't have to worry about how much I'm using, how full my markers are, if I have a refill, because Lord knows I don't own all them refills. Them refills expensive. I don't own them all. So now I'm just going to go ahead and stamp my characters. This was the only small, teeny tiny little portion of masking I did. And this was to make sure that my flagpole was behind my elephant character. And so I didn't even, do you see how lazy I was? I didn't even cut out the whole mask. I just cut out the left-hand side because all I needed really was to mask the ear. So once that was done, I went ahead and did the rest of the stamping. Now I'm showing you this part because for this rhino, I'm using second generation stamping just on his bottom because I want that to look like it's in the water. So I stamped just his bottom off so that the black line would not be as prominent. It would look like it was in the water. Then, of course, we're going to move on to the Copic Coloring. So, because I didn't mask anything in my super laziness, I need to color the rest of this elephant blue. Weird, I know, but this will make it so that there is no differentiation between the color when I start coloring with my gray markers, that it all just kind of has like this blue undertone to it, which is fine because they're cool gray markers and they have a blue undertone anyway. So when I was doing my shading, it's a really good thing that I start with my shading with my lightest color because I'm not even paying attention to my light source. And then I realize, dude, your sun is in the top left-hand corner, not the top right-hand corner. So that basically means I have to shade backward from everything that I normally do. Now, you've heard me in my other videos tell you, find a light source the way that you like to do it, and then just always do that because it's super easy, unless you're like me and then you create a scene where your light source is on the left and you basically get yourself in a little bit of trouble. So this did take me a little bit longer than it normally would because I'm going against the grain here, folks. This is foreign to me, all of this shading on the right-hand side. I don't really like it. I like to be in my comfort zone, just color in where I'm happy. But then again, it's good to push outside of your boundaries. So basically, I'm adding the shading to the right-hand side of the elephant because the sun is on the top left-hand side. So the majority of the shading will be down and to the right. And I guess the pro is at least you get to hear me say something besides down and to the left. So look, we're mixing it up all over the place. So underneath the elephant's chin, where that arm is tucked in, there would be shading. There's going to be more shading on the right leg than there will be on the left. And then for the darkest color, I'm just really adding little lines, just little teeny tiny bits, because I don't want, I keep thinking she's a her. She's a her now. I don't want her to be super dark. And then I'm doing a lot more of the shading with that C5, just using the C7 really for, like I said, those darker parts. So I'm not even really using flicking motions. I'm just kind of scribbling on some color because this particular style of coloring, this elephant's really all going to be one color at the end of the day, so the flicking isn't that important, plus the C's blend really well together, and I already kind of have a base layer going on because of that blue. So I'm going to do the inside of her ears completely with the lightest color and then just hit those little highlighted areas so everything kind of blends. And I'm not going to worry about her toenails or anything like that because they're out in the sun. They would have some blush on their cheeks. So I am going to add a little bit of this blush color in little circles on my elephant's cheeks and then also to the inside of her ears. Just to kind of break up that gray and add a little bit of pop of color to her. Well, I got my grays out. I might as well do the rhino. Might as well get it done. So I'm filling him in almost completely with this C1. I am not putting the C1 over the areas that are underneath the water. It's too light. There would be no point. I did start with the C3, coloring in the legs completely, and then that was still too light. So I'm going to go back, you'll see, with the C5 and hit it again. So again, there would be shading underneath their chin. You'll see me here coloring in these arm floaties, because let me tell you, until the end of it, when I'm outlining my image, I didn't even realize they were arm floaties. Didn't know it. I just thought he had fat, puffy rhino arms. Right. This is why I'm not an illustrator, folks. So anyway, adding some more shading to the right-hand side. I didn't really add too much more to his actual horn, the rhino horn, because it's sticking out further from his body. It would be lighter. It would catch more light. But I did add a little bit of shading underneath his goggles and underneath his chin, blending that out now with the C3. I didn't use any of the C7 on him. I wanted them to look somewhat different. And then going over kind of the whole thing with the C1, including the parts that are in his glasses. I felt like that little horn was blending in a little bit too much, so I'm gonna, first I'm gonna go to the blue. So for that, it's the same blue that I used on my elephant. I'm just filling in his glasses, the little goggles. And then I'm gonna go back in with the C5 and add a little bit more of a shadow next to his horn so it sticks out a little bit more. I used a lot of red in this card. I don't know why. Beach scenes for me, I just feel like there's a lot of red. Like it's a bright, fun, happy summer color. I don't even really like red. But anyway, decided to do my flag red. So this is kind of my go-to red combination. And I'm coloring it so that the section in the middle has the highlight. So it looks like the flag is waving. It gives it some movement. And for the darkest color, I'm really just adding a teeny tiny little bit on each end. I'm not adding a lot of it because I don't need a lot of it. This isn't going to be a very dark card. I just want to add enough on there that there's going to be some contrast, so that the flag doesn't look dull. So blending that out, this time I am using some flicking motions. I was going to try to leave like a whiter highlight in the center, but then I looked at it and I didn't like it, so I just filled the whole thing in. From there, I'm going to make, see, I called it a her, but she doesn't have a top. Maybe it is a him. Maybe it's a baby elephant. We just let babies run around with no tops on. Maybe just a little baby elephant. Huh. Things you think about when you're stamping a card. Anyway, so I did her little bottom of her swimsuit red, and then I'm also going to do his swimsuit red. Now I picked the R29 to do his swimsuit with because I needed it to be dark enough to show up underneath the water. So once I was done with that, I decided to add a little bit of red to the beach ball that she's carrying. So I did 2 small sections, and this isn't really doing the shading, is just keeping it, like I said, down to that bottom right so that the highlight portion is on the left hand side. And because these areas are so small, I probably didn't even need to use 4 colors, but I guess I'm in the habit of it, so I always do. But it probably would have been fine just even being shaded with 2 colors. So once that was complete, I went ahead and also colored in the flag, and I did that the same way I did the big flag, so no need to bore you to tears. Moving right along to the yellows for this rubber ducky inflatable here, and I like bright colors, and to me that is, you know, summer, and it's very bright. Again, I used my mid-tone to add the detail to his swim trunks because I needed something to be dark enough to show up on top of all of that distress ink. For the rubber ducky, it would be darker behind the neck because it would, blown up, it would stick out past the body of the elephant. So we want to make sure that we're giving that some depth. And then also where she has the ball resting against it, there would be some slight shadows. The lightest part will be the right-hand side of the face. For the sun, I use the same exact colors. I'm going to completely fill the entire thing in with my lightest color, which is the YO2. And then just to kind of break it up and give it just a little bit of dimension, obviously the sun doesn't really look like this, but it's our own little card world and we can do whatever we want. So I added some shading around the circle and then also to the center. Same thing with the darkest color. I added just a circle of it, and right now it looks a little bit comical, but don't worry, as we go over it, those colors will blend in together. The more ink you put on the paper, the better they're going to blend. And then once it's dry, it really does blend quite well. So for the orange, my lightest color is actually the darkest color in my yellow, and it gives that some continuity. Also is less markers I have to pull out because, like we discussed in the beginning, I am lazy. So for here, I did the highlight on either side of his goggles because those would stick out so far past his face. There would be some highlight there. The darkest parts would be behind his little horn. I decided to do the little bucket orange as well to have another area of that color. And again, just adding some slight shading on the right-hand side, and then also on the back rim of the bucket. The way that this is drawn, there is a back rim there, so it would be darker because it would be further away. I didn't have to do a ton of shading on this because the areas weren't too big. For here, I did, I wanted to bring in those bluish aqua colors, those blue-greens, so I decided to put that on the handle of the bucket and then also the beach ball. Again, very, very small areas. You do not need to put down a ton of color. I'm really using just the tip of the marker, especially with my darkest color. If you're not confident in your ability to do this, I would encourage you to practice, but in the interim, if you don't want to mess around with it, just use 2 colors. I took my medium color and kind of did a couple of strokes over my character that is swimming because I wanted that to look kind of watery and blend it out. I picked some E markers, and then I didn't even realize that I picked up the middle tone E marker. I'm not even using the lightest color, and then here's where I realize it. I'm like, oh, this is really dark. yeah, not what I'm supposed to be using. But fortunately I started on the center, which would in fact be darker because it would fall behind those other portions of the castle. And then the other thing I did, which I didn't show you, was color in that flagpole because there wasn't really anything interesting or noteworthy about it. So for the little towers that are sticking out from the castle, I'm going to add the shading on the right hand side. I'm going to add significantly more shading to the areas in the center because they would be set back, but still concentrated on the right hand side, except for the very center portion because that tower is directly in front of it. There would be darker shading there where it would block the sun. And then I also will go back in, because I didn't do it at the time, I will go back in and add some shading to the windows to the right hand side. Here I am adding that darker shading there, and then also to kind of the door that is built in. And then from there we're just going to work back out to the lightest color to kind of blend everything out. The E50 family is one of my favorite E families. But especially for sand, I use this basically all summer long for all of my summer cards. It just seems like a really good sand color to me. Speaking of sand, it's not just for sand castles. I'm going to add some detail to that beach to make it look more beach-like. So here I'm just doing a couple little scribbles underneath each of the images that is on the sand. This is just to ground them, give them something to stand on. It's not a shadow per se. It's just something that will give them just a little bit of something to sit on, because images need to be grounded in your card. And you don't want your images to look like they're floating round about, especially if you're doing a scene card like this is. So I'm going to go in with the E57 and I'm going to use what they call stippling, which is basically just a series of dots. You can add more or less shading depending upon how densely packed your dots are, but I am really just using it for the texture to break up that large area of sand. So I'm adding it all around my images and then some along the waterline, which I'm not being terribly particular about it because there are other things that we're going to do that are going to break that up. So here's a note. I did the Distress Oxide Ink because I was so excited to do it. But I had to go back and do it again because my character, the Copic Coloring, basically annihilated any of the stencil that was on top of my character, and I needed it to be on top of him so that he would look like he was in the water. So if you decide to do this, wait and do it. There's no need to do it twice. For this white gel pen, I'm going in and adding some highlights to just the shiny objects. So his goggles, the float, and then I'm also using it to fill in her little toenails. The last thing that I'm going to do to build up the background is I'm going to get some white acrylic paint. This is cheap white acrylic paint, folks. I bought this at Walmart approximately 5 to 7 years ago. I got my brush wet with a little bit of water. You should note that the brush I am using is a very stiff brush. And the reason I put the water on there was to dilute the paint a little bit. Now, I'm not working on watercolor paper, so you don't want it to be sopping wet. You just want to dilute the paper a little bit because that makes the paint more translucent. And then I will go back in with full strength white paint, and this is going to create a really cool effect for the water, like it's kind of crashing on the beach. Once that's dry, I'm going to go in and outline everything because I love to outline everything. The only part I'm not going to outline is his part of the body that's under the water. I do not want that to be bold or eye-catching in any way. Once I'm done with that, here's where I realized that he has arm floaties on. Like, honest to God, Kelly, what did you... He had like the fattest arms ever. Anyway, so I just went in and hit that with an orange marker. I had already done all the shading with the grays, so no need to do all the shading again. I added the little beach bum saying to the flag because that's adorable. And then for my sentiment, I chose the Make a Splash, which I just thought was super cute, especially with the white waves kind of crashing right there. This new sequin set is also part of the release. It has some really cool iridescent ones in there. I picked those out and adhered them with some glossy accents to my card. And then the very last thing I'm going to do is go in with some clear Wink of Stella because all the things should have shimmer. I'm going to put that on the highlighted areas, and then I also dotted it kind of in the water and along the area where the wave is breaking. So that is the entire card. I hope that you learned something and enjoyed your time, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.